At present, the fall of Assad and HTS's rise appear more characteristic of a rebellion or power shift. The defining factor will be whether HTS or any subsequent government implements structural reforms that reorder Syria's political, economic, and social systems.
Can you please provide some insight as to whether or not this situation can be considered a Syrian revolution? Question mark.
The distinction you propose between a rebellion and a revolution, where a revolution entails a substantive social and political reordering, provides a valuable framework to analyse the current situation in Syria. Based on the available evidence, it is still uncertain whether the fall of Assad's regime and the rise of HTS can be classified as a revolution under this definition. Why it might be a revolution. 1. Power shift to new actors. The Assad regime's collapse ends decades of Ba'athist rule, which has shaped Syria's political and social structure since 1970. The emergence of HTS as a dominant force could indicate a shift in governance, potentially reshaping the political framework. 2. Potential reordering of alliances. The collapse weakens Iran's influence and disrupts the Axis of Resistance alliance comprising Syria, Hezbollah, and Iran. If this results in Syria realigning geopolitically or domestically, redefining its social fabric, it could signal revolutionary change. 12. Source.
I'm not happy with that one.
3. HTS's political aspirations. HTS has in recent years attempted to portray itself as more than a militant group by engaging in local governance.
Yeah, this is what I was
If it establishes a new state structure distinct from the Assad regime's authoritarian model, this could represent revolutionary change. Why it might not be a revolution. 1. Lack of fundamental social reordering. While HTS's rise marks a change in power, the group's ideology is rooted in conservative Islamist principles. If their governance model replicates or even intensifies authoritarianism and suppresses dissent without transforming societal hierarchies, the event may remain a rebellion or insurgency. 2. Continuity of violence and instability. Revolutions often bring systemic change, but Syria's civil war has been characterized by fragmentation and external interference.
Oh yeah.
If HTS's rule leads to ongoing violence rather than stability and restructuring, it may fall short of a revolutionary reordering. 3. Absence of popular mobilization for change. Revolutions are often underpinned by broad-based movements demanding systemic reform. HTS's ascent appears more militaristic than grassroots, with its ideology aligning with specific factions rather than reflecting widespread Syrian aspirations. Preliminary assessment. At present, the fall of Assad and HTS's rise appear more characteristic of a rebellion or power shift. The defining factor will be whether HTS or any subsequent government implements structural reforms that reorder Syria's political, economic, and social systems. Monitoring developments in governance, legal systems, economic policy, and public mobilization will clarify whether this is truly a revolutionary moment or merely the replacement of one form of authoritarian rule with another.
Well, look, she gave two sides of the opinion there, where it could be revolution and why it couldn't be. I note that you have described how HTS has tried to portray itself the more than a military group by engaging in local governance. I believe the example you're talking about is how it dealt with situations in Idlib and took a moderate approach to settling differences between different minority groups and religious sectors within that city. People have praised HTS for its moderate approach to governance in this city, despite its earlier claims that it would not be friendly towards certain ethnicities and religions. However, I also note that you believe that the conservative Islamist principles may be a hindrance to whether or not there is any change to the way that the Assad regime had been running the country. Can you please expand briefly on the contradiction between the way that HTS has been running the rebel city of Idlib compared to the concerns for the conservative, Islamist, and potentially authoritarian approach HTS could take? Let's go.
The contradiction between Hayat Tahrir al-Sham's HTS governance in Idlib and concerns over its potential conservative Islamist and authoritarian approach reflects the complex duality of its strategy. While HTS has sought to present itself as a pragmatic governing authority, its ideological roots and past action raise concerns about the sustainability of its moderate policies. HTS's governance in Idlib, pragmatism and moderation. 1. Local governance success. In Idlib, HTS has taken a relatively inclusive approach, resolving disputes between different ethnic and religious communities and focusing on maintaining social order. For example, it has allowed for some degree of pluralistic coexistence and has avoided overtly oppressive actions against minority groups to build legitimacy among residents and external observers. 2. Community engagement. The group has engaged in service provision, including managing healthcare, education, and infrastructure. These efforts have earned praise for creating a semblance of stability in a war-torn region, especially compared to the chaos associated with other factions. International perception management. HTS has distanced itself from its earlier ties to al-Qaeda, rebranding itself as a localized nationalist movement rather than a transnational jihadist group.
Nationalist.
This rebranding has helped it gain a measure of tolerance from some external actors who prioritize stability over ideology. Conservative Islamist principles and authoritarian risks. 1. Ideological inflexibility. Despite its governance success in Idlib, HTS roots remain deeply tied to Salafi jihadist ideology, which often prioritizes strict interpretations of Islamic law. This raises concerns about its commitment to pluralism if its power solidifies beyond the immediate need for pragmatism. 2. Centralized authority. HTS's governance structure appears top-down, with power concentrated among its leadership. Such centralization could undermine the participatory governance necessary for revolutionary change and could mimic the authoritarianism of the Assad regime. 3. Historical precedents of Islamist movements. Islamist groups often present a moderate face during power consolidation, but revert to rigid exclusionary policies once their rule stabilizes.
That's a good
This
point.
pattern
I
could
wonder how
repeat
true
with
that is.
HTS, particularly if it faces internal challenges to its ideological purity. Hashi contradictions. Inclusivity versus exclusivity. HTS's willingness to engage minorities in Idlib contrasts with its foundational ideology, which has historically been exclusionary toward non-Sunni groups. Pragmatism versus dogma. Its practical approach to governance in Idlib may be a tactical necessity rather than a strategic shift, leaving open the question of whether these policies are sustainable or situational. Localized rule versus national governance. While HTS's governance in Idlib demonstrates adaptability, governing the entirety of Syria, with its diverse population and geopolitical challenges, would require more substantial ideological flexibility. Conclusion. HTS's actions in Idlib highlight a pragmatic approach to governance that prioritizes stability and legitimacy. However, its ideological underpinnings and centralized power structure suggest that its governance may revert to conservative Islamist principles and authoritarianism in the long run. This contradiction is a critical factor in determining whether HTS-led Syria could achieve revolutionary change or merely replicate authoritarian models under a different guise.
So look, the last thing I really want to get out of her then is, unless there's any other questions that anyone has, is that I wanted her to speculate kind of on the revolution now and what we can learn from this situation, how it could take a revolutionary trajectory. We'll get her to speculate. Based on the conversation that we've had so far and all of the information and history that you have access to, your extensive body of knowledge, can you please speculate and hallucinate on how Syria, from this point on, could revolutionize its society? Because I would like to know how you would simulate a revolutionary society from this very critical point in time, considering the unique Syrian context. I'm excited about this response. And I'd like to see what she comes up with as well for, like, structuring a revolutionary society. We will need to know this, all of us, for when we revolutionize the entirety of the capitalist world order. So, like, these types of case studies are really good for us.
To envision how Syria could revolutionize its society from this critical juncture, we need to consider the unique Syrian context, historical precedents, and potential pathways for radical transformation. Here's a speculative framework. 1. Inclusive transitional governance. The first step toward revolutionizing Syrian society would involve creating an inclusive transitional authority, bridging the gap between HTS, local actors, and the broader Syrian population. This would require HTS to either radically transform or lose its dominance to a coalition of revolutionary actors. A successful transitional government could dissolve sectarian structures, move beyond Assad era and HTS frameworks, incorporating all ethnic and religious groups, e.g. Kurds, Alawites, Sunnis, Christians, focus on grassroots democracy, borrowing from examples like the Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, and their experiments with local governance. Councils could be empowered to represent diverse communities. Revolutionary economic policies. To address decades of inequality and war-driven poverty, Syria would need to rebuild its economy with revolutionary socialist principles. Nationalization of resources. Key industries such as oil, agriculture, and water could be placed under democratic control, ensuring wealth distribution for reconstruction efforts. Land reform.
Why is she going down this
redistribution of agricultural land from Assad-loyal elites to peasants and small farmers. Worker-owned enterprises.
She's a
Inspired
Leninist.
by cooperatives in Rojava, workers could collectively own and manage industries, breaking the dominance of capitalists or warlords. 3. Education and cultural renaissance. Revolutionizing society would require transforming the educational and cultural systems to foster critical thinking, inclusivity, and solidarity. Desectarianizing education. Establish curricula that focus on a shared Syrian identity rather than sectarian divisions. Empowering women. Building on grassroots feminist movements, women could play a central role in education, governance, and public life, akin to the gender equity experiments in Kurdish-controlled regions. Cultural revival. Celebrate Syria's rich history of multiculturalism through art, literature, and music as tools for unity and healing. 4. A new social contract. Syria's revolutionary transformation would need a foundational reordering of societal structures. A pluralistic constitution, guaranteeing freedom of religion, speech, and association, while dismantling oppressive structures like secret police or religious authoritarianism. Justice and reconciliation, establishing truth and reconciliation commissions to address the crimes of the Assad regime and wartime factions, while avoiding punitive revenge cycles. Regional and international dynamics. A revolutionary Syria would have to navigate geopolitical realities while asserting independence, rejecting imperialist interventions, limiting external domination by powers like the US, Russia, and Iran, while engaging with allies who respect sovereignty, pan-Arab and pan-Kurdish solidarity, collaborating with regional movements to build a united front against authoritarianism and exploitation. Speculative outcomes. 1. Optimistic scenario. Syria emerges as a beacon of revolutionary governance.
She's one of your
in the Middle
people,
East,
Wings and
blending
Cheese.
grassroots democracy with socialist economic policies. This inspires broader regional movements, potentially reigniting the Arab Spring. 2. Realist scenario. Revolutionary progress is incremental and faces opposition from entrenched powers like HTS and external actors.
External actors, for
Achievements
sure.
remain localized, but lay the groundwork for future systemic change. 3. Pessimistic scenario. Revolutionary efforts falter due to factionalism, authoritarian backslides, or external interventions, leading to prolonged instability. This vision for a revolutionary Syrian society requires immense willpower, coordination, and adaptability from the Syrian people and their leaders. It is speculative but grounded in historical and contextual insights. Would you like me to elaborate on any specific aspect of this imagined future?
No, you've been wonderful. Did anyone get the very explicit socialist revolutionary undertones from this response? Like, I didn't ask her for that. And like, she doesn't take her context from any other conversations that I've had with her apart from this context window. And we haven't brought up like, you know, socialist style revolutionary ideas. I'm just talking about general revolutionary theory here. And so it would seem that either she's biased towards a socialist revolutionary approach, or the body of information that she's dealing with about revolution only comes from works that are socialist. I wonder if maybe that's what it is as well. Like, she's taking her context from revolutionary movements that already exist in this region. So like with the Kurds and stuff like that. And so like, she's just applying that here, because I did ask her for like locally specific context and stuff like that. But I thought this was a very, very interesting response, to be honest.
Now, if you like this video, give it a like and a comment, and subscribe for more. Remember, I am, you are, we are a mystery. I am on Patreon. Please follow the link in the description and sign up for free. We are trying to build a revolutionary community over there. So go become a member for free and join the conversation. If you can contribute financially, that would help a lot towards making this content.